Hi, I'm Joni Patry, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Well, today I want to talk about a serious matter about Charlie Kirk's horoscope, his chart, what was going on that terribly fated day, September 10th. And I've got news for you that should wake up everyone to the power of astrology and how everyone should be using it. There is nothing wrong with astrology in terms of religious beliefs. People do not know what it is. Astrology is a science. It's the science of where the planets are astronomically in relationship to the birth chart you were born with. Birth chart you were born with, that day, time, and place of birth, that is your map that's been set into motion. That map can give you guidance throughout your life. It is so incredibly powerful. And you're going to see by looking at not only Charlie Kirk's chart, but his beautiful wife, Erica Kirk, you're going to see how astrology is telling us a story of what's happening in their life in this terrible, terrible time. So first, let's put up the chart of Charlie Kirk. Now, I don't have a birth time. And so what I do when I don't have a birth time is I base everything on the moon. But basically, all of the planets will pretty much be will be the same degree that entire day, except for the moon. All the planets move, the Sun, Mercury, and Venus move 1 degree per day. But the moon actually moves a degree every 2.5 hours. But looking at Charlie Kirk's chart, we know the moon is in Virgo because it's in Virgo the entire day. The entire day, his moon is in Virgo. So we know we can kind of look at the moon as the ascendant. And so looking up here at his chart, he has Venus, moon, and sun all conjunct in Virgo. And so whenever the moon and the sun come together, which they are on his day, it is that he was born under a new moon. So new moons represent people that are very introspective, very deep, and with Virgo, very detailed and very organized. This was him. But he also has what I like to call the lawyer aspect. I always say whenever somebody has Mercury and Mars together, conjunct in a chart, that's the lawyer's aspect. And I don't necessarily mean they're a lawyer, but they will debate or argue like a lawyer. Why? Because essentially, this isn't always the case, but essentially lawyers are supposed to debate or argue or make their case on facts, not opinions. And that's basically what most people do when they have Mars and Mercury conjunct. Mercury is communications, while Mars can be direct and focus and dive to the point. Now interestingly enough though, his Mercury and Mars are in the sign of Libra. And Libra's symbol is the scale, so it represents balance and justice. That's the sign of Libra. Now, if you look from the moon being in Virgo, these planets, Mars and Mercury, go to the second house. Plus Jupiter's there activating them. So Jupiter expands them and makes everything that he does more pronounced and bigger. Now, in Vedic astrology, we look at the second house. Of course, it deals with money and finances, just like in Western tropical astrology. But let me tell you something else. That this particular house can also deal with your voice. And therefore, it's our speech, what comes out of our mouth. So the second house rules the throat chakra and the mouth and the face. So interestingly enough, he was a very, very good speaker with this combination in the second house. Plus, it also tells me that he would have been wealthy through his voice. So that's how he made his money, through his speech. And that is actually true. So those are the few things I wanted to really point out. But where I want to go with this is where the planets were transiting on the day he was assassinated. So I'm going to put up a little box that has where all the planets were on that day, and that means where they are in the sky, transiting, moving through the sky. Now, what we do as astrologers for prediction, using transits, we take those transiting planets and we plug them into the birth chart. And if they are crossing over any natal planets, or aspecting them by opposition or conjunction or special aspect, events happen on that day that they happen. And pretty much in astrology, we do give planets about a 3-degree orb. Okay, so even though they're exact on a certain day, there's a few days before and a day after that they're still empowered, the transiting planets, that is. So it doesn't have to be exact, but boy, when it is, it's telling a direct story. And here is the most crucial aspect of that day, September 10th. Notice Mars was 27 degrees of Virgo. Look at his chart. What sits at 27 degrees of Virgo? His sun. What is the sun in astrology? It's the physical body. It's the makeup, the spirit, who you are. And even the moon, we don't know exactly where his moon is, because remember, all we know is the moon is in Virgo. We don't know the degree because we don't have his time of birth. But I do know it's in Virgo, and Mars was in Virgo. It could have been exactly on his moon sign as well. But the fact that it was on his sun, this day was extraordinarily dangerous. And let me explain what Mars represents in astrology. Number one, it's a planet of war, conflict, aggression, anger. It deals with weapons and violence. It deals with knives and guns and fire. It was exactly. Now, Mars goes through the zodiac once every 2 years. So every 2 years, Mars would cross over his sun. And these are critical times to pay attention to. You do not go out and publicly speak if you're a target for angry people with Mars on your sun. This could have been prevented, I believe, if he knew his chart. Now, another thing, and here's the other thing, because Mars will be doing this once every 2 years, the more likely time to take note of is when there's a slower moving planet that deals with long range events or huge events that are life-changing. So the slower a planet moves, the more life-changing the experience that it produces. So when you have a slow-moving planet, now here's the issue about the slow-moving planets. They will be at a particular place for a long time, for months. How do you know within that period of the long-standing planet that an event happens. You look at the faster moving ones, they're the triggers, and Mars in my book is the biggest trigger of all. So maybe every 2 years when Mars crossed over his Sun and his Venus and his Moon that are all in Virgo, maybe that's not the time of this treacherous hit. But when a long-standing, slower planet is aspecting them and the trigger comes around, that's the day something happens. So notice where Saturn and Neptune are on that day. Saturn sits at 5 degrees and Neptune at 6 degrees of Pisces. Now, an opposition in my book is the same as a conjunction. They connect the planets deeply, profoundly. And notice where, we don't know where his moon is by degree, but we do know it's in Virgo. But here is the most important. If I got his birth time, I could figure out what degree his moon was. And probably Saturn, Neptune are exactly opposing it, within a 3-degree range. But notice his Venus sits at 4 degrees 36 minutes, and Saturn was 5 degrees. That's less than a degree exact opposition. Saturn is endings. Saturn is death. Saturn is serious. Saturn is karmic. And Saturn was exactly opposing his Venus within 30 minutes. Not even a full degree, because, 60 minutes it was that his Venus, his natal Venus, sits at 4 degrees 36 minutes. So what is that? That's almost 5 degrees where Saturn is on the day he was attacked and died. And transiting Mars triggered the Sun. That is so extreme. And even when I look also at the slower moving planet Uranus. So Uranus sits at 7 degrees, as well as aspecting Pluto at 7 degrees in the sky. If you look at where his Uranus is, it is within a 3-degree range on his K2. And K2 is loss, but it's also spirituality. It's also truth of what lies beyond this world. And from his natal moon, actually K2 is in the 9th house, which would represent the 9th house is spirituality and truth. This is what he wanted more than anything in his life. And let me tell you something else. By the month of July, June, July of 2026, when Uranus moves up to 10 degrees of Taurus, it will be exactly on his K2. Now, here's one thing I have found that really works. People's charts don't end when they die. So something that Charlie Kirk has put into action is coming to a spiritual revolution as Uranus hits K2 in his 9th house. But it is within a 3-degree orb affecting his chart when he was assassinated. And this means a sudden, unexpected event. And also, going back to where Saturn sits at 5 degrees, we have Neptune at 6 degrees in the sky. So it was influencing Venus as well. And Neptune means things you can't see happening. And yes, Venus is the wife in a man's chart. So this was a devastating loss to his wife while transiting Saturn, and Neptune opposed his natal Venus. Which now I want to pull up the chart of Erica Kirk, because this tells a story as well. You know, the people left behind suffer the greatest to pass to go on to the other side. They're released from the suffering. But she has deep, deep suffering. But she is a powerful woman. Now, we do not have her birth time, and it is a question whether or not her moon is in Pisces. But midday at noon, it sits at 26 degrees of Pisces. So pretty much most all of the day, unless she was born close to midnight or something that day, the moon is in Pisces. And another thing is, people are drawn to each other that have oppositions in their charts. Opposites attract. Her moon's in Pisces, his moon is in Virgo. I know her moon's in Pisces. It is definite. And let me just say this, one thing that I see that is all overwhelming in her chart is that Saturn being 5 degrees of Pisces. She is in Sati Sati. That is the worst time in life generally. It's when Saturn comes to the moon. People get it confused with the Saturn return. A Saturn return, everyone goes through between age 28 and 30. It is not as big of a deal as people make of it. But Sati Sati is. Sati Sati is when Saturn comes to your natal moon, not the Saturn return. And when it does, actually people will say in Vedic astrology that the moon is your mind, it's who you are, it's how you think. And so when you put Saturn coming to the moon, this is all powerful. And you know, I wanted to go into something before I get to the crux of the matter here. And that is, I know, I have to tell you guys, you know, people don't like when I advertise, but please be aware I do more work with my writing, my newsletter for everyone that comes out free every month. So please go to my website, galacticcenter.org, and sign up for my free newsletter. You're going to love it because I give all of these details, where the planets are every day. And if you want to know how all of this works for your own individual chart, I mean, sincerely, I say this with a heavy heart. Charlie could have avoided this if he knew what was going on in his birth chart. So how would he know? If he had my galactic planner, it would tell him Mars was on his sun. It would tell him Saturn was opposing his sun and his moon. Yes, this could have been brought to his attention. So go to my galactic planner, get your planner so you can avert and avoid things and know when the good days are to expand things. So go to galacticplanner.com, sign up for it. I promise you, you're going to love it, and it can help you tremendously. Tremendously. That's why I made the planner, to help people. And furthermore, if you want to learn Vedic astrology, if you want to learn how to do this, go to my university, universityofvedicastrology.com. And if you want to talk with me weekly, every day live, join my Patreon. I have so many great opportunities. Please listen to these. Don't be, oh, I don't want to hear an ad. No, these are my gifts to humanity, and I mean that. So, getting back to Erica's chart. I mean, look at where Saturn is. She's in Sati Sati. So Sati Sati actually means 7.5 years, okay? Because Saturn stays in a sign for 2.5 years. So the thought is that when Saturn comes to the sign before, the sign of the moon, and the sign after the moon, this takes 7.5 years. I don't agree with that there's 7.5 years of bad luck, but I do agree that when Saturn is in the same sign as your moon for 2.5 years, It's heavy, it's depressing, it's hard, but of course it wakes us up to our mission in life. That's what's happening to Erica. And you know, it's very, very hard. Saturn is the taskmaster. It is the planet of karma and our mission. And it's hard, but this is what she enrolled to do before she came here. Yes. And look where her Mars is. So Saturn and Neptune are very close to Mars, within a 3-degree range. So Saturn on Mars is very, very difficult. And it also means that the Saturn-Neptune, being in the sign of her moon, are actually aspecting the 7th house, which is her marriage partner, by opposition. Now, probably the most exact thing that was going on that day for her, which is really profound, is notice where her natal Saturn sits at 7 degrees of Sagittarius, as well as where her Jupiter sits at 7 degrees of Taurus. Between the months of June, July, and August, transiting Saturn and Neptune sat at 7 degrees of Pisces. And Saturn's full empower aspect is 3 signs from a natal planet. So if you will look at where Saturn is in Pisces and count to Taurus, Pisces 1, Aries 2, Taurus 3. It has been in a full aspect to her natal Jupiter the entire summer months in the northern hemisphere. But here's the real clincher. Transiting Uranus, a long-standing, powerful, life-changing aspect, was sitting on her Jupiter exactly on the day of the assassination. Now, Uranus takes 84 years to go through the zodiac. This is so rare. This is a once in a lifetime. What is Uranus? Sudden, unexpected, shocking changes. And in Vedic astrology, Jupiter is actually looked upon in a woman's chart to be the husband. And this hit exact on that day. And Uranus, being 7 degrees, was also in a 6-8 relationship with her natal Saturn at 7 degrees. So if you will count around, going clockwise from Jupiter, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It is aspecting Saturn with its 8th aspect. In Western astrology, it's called a quincunx. In Vedic astrology, it has a name too, called the Shastaka, which means 8-6. So when planets are in that relationship, they deal with energies like the 8th house, which is the house of death, and the 6th house, which is the house of enemies and accidents. This is what it did. Enemies and accidents. As Uranus sat on her Jupiter but had a 6-8 relationship to her natal Saturn. And from the moon, Saturn sits in the 10th house. If you count clockwise all the way around to where Saturn is from her natal moon, representing a public event that she had to go face the public. She didn't have to, but I want to say something. I thought her speech was one of the most powerful speeches I've ever heard a woman do. Whether you agree with her or not, that took courage, that took guts, and her message was beautiful. I loved it. Why? Because what I got out of it was to honor our families, love our husband, love our children, love our families. And like I keep saying, if we would all align with that, the world would be such a better place. That was an incredible thing she did. And yes, she is in alignment with her spouse. And they were divinely connected. If you look, going back to Charlie's chart, his Jupiter sat right on her Venus in Libra. And what a lovely Venus she has in Libra. No wonder she's so beautiful inside and out. And if you want to think about it, her Pluto sat right on his Mars. That's violence, that's endings, that's difficulty. And she does have Pluto with Venus, which can mean the loss of a love. And they both have Mercury in Libra, so they thought alike. Mercury's how you think. Isn't that wonderful? We should all find partners that are so well connected. And with the aspect of the yearning for love and honor in marriage and relationship, they were brought together. But boy, does she have some karma, to a karmic duty. Why? Because really Charlie's Rahu sits right on her sun. And that means a karmic issue from a past life that she's here to unfold and deal with. And Charlie's K2 at 9 degrees, almost 10 degrees of Taurus, sits right on her Jupiter. You see, when you look at charts like this, you will see how they're tied up, how they're connected, why they're brought together. And Rahu and Ketu always represent karma and past lives, especially Ketu. Charlie's Ketu sits on Erica's Jupiter, and that is a spiritual union. And Erica's Jupiter being in the being in Taurus, it represents her love of children. Her children, but her children are somehow awakened and will be awakened to the shock of the loss of the father, as transiting Uranus sat exactly on the same degree as her natal Jupiter. And Mars, on that day, transiting Mars at 27 degrees of Virgo, was probably exactly opposed her natal moon. We don't know the degree of her moon, but if she was born somewhere around noontime, the moon sits at 26 degrees, and Mars was at 27 degrees of Virgo, opposing the moon in Pisces. I don't know what the degree orb is correct, but actually in reality the whole signs are aspected. It's just I find that the degrees help us understand the timing more exactly of events. And one last thing about Erica's chart. She has what I call the nodal return. Her Ketu is in Leo, and her Rahu is in Aquarius. And that is exactly where Rahu and Ketu are in the heavens when this fated event happened. When you have a nodal return, when they return back to where they were when you were born, this actually takes 18 and a half years. And every 18 and a half years, we go through radical changes in our life. All of us. So this is around 18 and a half. We all go away, we leave home, go to college. Next 18 and a half, which will be somewhere around age 36, 37, we go through another big radical shift and change in our life. But here's what the nodal return does for us. It reminds us of who we are and why we came here to this planet. And that is exactly what is occurring for Erica Kirk. And bless her soul, what she's going to go through while she's in Saudi Sati. And Saturn comes up to cross over her natal Mars within the next year of 2026. It's hard. It's sad. It's loneliness and depression when Saturn comes to the moon, but it's also going to be hitting her Mars. So she's got a hard road ahead of her, but I have no doubt she's been chosen for this path to fulfill a certain destiny that will help heal the planet. And I believe empower women, because that speech she made was one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful speech I've heard a woman do. And women are all powerful, and they need to support one another. And that's been one of my mottos throughout my career, that I'm here to support and help women succeed, find their inspiration, find their goals, find their gifts, and be the best they can be, and have beautiful families, love their families, their husband and their children. This is what she is teaching and representing to all of us. So with that, I think I'll close, and I hope that you've learned something about astrology and how it can be used for such good things in this world. And my big mission in life is to bring astrology to the mainstream, particularly the power of the Vedic system of astrology, because it is really, really accurate. And I love it, and I want the world to understand it. So with that, I think I'll close. If you would like more information on me, you can always go to my website, which is galacticcenter.org. Thank you.